What is going on, Peacemakers, and welcome back to another video for the segment of What is Sin? Guys, I'm really excited about this one because as we are unraveling these other sins, we are also unraveling something within ourselves that really tends to speak to one another. So I'm really glad we went with the direction in which we went, starting off how we did so, because I think it's so amazing and very telling, that really talks to itself, right? And then going through these subjects as we have really does, in my opinion, a fantastic job of explaining how one really affects the other. So, anyways, I digress. Let's get into today's topic, which is wrath. So, wrath, this is an interesting one because the definition of it, like we always like to start off with, is extreme anger or rage. But wrath, besides its obvious physical application to what it could, potentially turn into, also is a huge sign of undisciplined and impatient exploration, I guess, for lack of a better term. It's interesting because wrath is so, it's so frustrating just to be in the presence of wrath. What I mean by that is it's kind of this huge irritation that is kind of just be blown up into this huge elephant in the room that everybody's aware of, but nobody wants to talk about it. I mean, think about it. When you're in the presence of wrath, when somebody is showing signs of aggression, signs of rage, anger, extreme anger, what is the emotion that you're feeling, right? Now, sometimes for some individuals, it can be anxiety. For some people, it can be very uncomfortable. And I really think uncomfortable, but also anger is what often strikes me when I see the wrath, when I see other people engaging in wrath. And one thing that I hate more than anything is anger. I really do, because anger really shuts down all listening skills, and it heightens impatientness. It takes away, it snuffs out patience. It absolutely smothers it. And then, which contradicts the fruit of the spirit, which is another, when we get into morality, which is also another set of characteristics that we'll be getting into, because it's really been this juggle between the Ten Commandments but also the fruit of the spirit that I've been trying to figure out which one to go into next after this segment. But I still can't make heads or tails on that just yet. But I do want to get into this interesting conversation, which is wrath, obviously, which is the whole point of the video. So, extreme anger and rage provokes a lot of other emotions. Primarily, one of the most important ones, to me at least, that we're kind of honing in on, has to do everything with impatient. Patience is a virtue. And I'm not trying to talk about the pros to patience, but in fact, kind of the replacement of patience, right? Because this isn't talking about the good and positive characteristics that Christ or the Bible really hones in on and wants us to engage in more often than not, but the absence of patienceness, which tends to be extreme anger or rage. And this antidote to this, or this anti patience, really, man, it really becomes a very difficult. It really becomes a very difficult thing to deal with on both sides, right? There's a very irritation to being on both halves of it. And when you can't really talk to somebody, when they have just absolutely shut down and no communication can be had there, it really begs the question, what can you do? And this is why often people use the expression or use the phrase, you can't fight fire with fire, because the only thing you do end up making is just a bigger fire, and a bigger fire really doesn't help anybody, right? And I'll keep going with that expression. When you fight fire with fire and you do end up essentially getting a bigger fire, the only way that will ever just leave and stop is when it has successfully destroyed everything in its path. Now, you can take that a couple of ways, in the metaphorical sense or in the physical sense. In the physical sense, probably could mean the death or unconsciousness or the surrendering of all parties involved. And then the metaphorical sense, it really just devours everything in its path until it's gone, right? Until all the fuel is gone. So, and this is why it's so important not to be so quick to anger. Why it's so important not to be so quick to rage. Now, one thing that I guess it's just a matter of training, or maybe it's just a matter of instinct, whichever one you want to call it. But I am so more likely to meet somebody at this state of being if they show signs of rage, if they show signs of extreme anger and aggression. I am so quick to meet them at that level. But this is where de-escalation really plays a huge hand in this. Now, I'm not here to give you a class about de-escalation skills and how there can be what the appropriate times of that and how effective it can be. But what is the physical application and negative effect to rage and extreme anger, and also what is the spiritual? So I think right off the bat we notice a lot of natural negative implications of extreme anger and aggression and rage right off the bat, of just physically seeing it, because then what manifests in here tends to externally manifest, like we've talked about in the previous episodes. And when it starts to do that, we really start to get a glimpse of something that is we really get this glimpse of sort of this man, I mean, it's hard to describe, because when you're there, it is just absolute pure chaos. Perfect timing. It is really just absolute chaos and destruction in manners in which are very hostile environment. And when it creates a hostile environment, that type of chaos festers and again blows up into epic proportions, where it just engulfs everything and destroys everything in its path, or everything at least that fuels it, which then could have casualties, just simply being around it, simply just being in its presence can absolutely land you into being a casualty of it, simply just because you're there, you're around, right? There's something that it can interact with, and unfortunately sometimes you could absolutely potentially be that interaction it could have or it could use, not often for the better. But why is rage in a physical sense bad? Well, rage in a physical sense is more likely to escalate a situation to very drastic measures of violence. 9 times out of 10, this is anger can be blown up into epic proportions to the degree in which oh domestic disputes escalate in a very large manner in which it usually ends up being some kind of bloodshed. Now, I don't mean it always has to end up deadly, but it does end up some type of wound, right? Rather, it's a spouse that grabs a knife and just stabs or cuts a significant other, which is oddly enough, a common theme within marriage, which I think is an interesting concept. Not something we're going to explore into this episode, but I think it's something that could also be a testament to rage and to to this sheer tunnel vision of of aggression that is so powerful to the degree in which we don't really care anymore who it hurts, who it affects. The very thing that we love and swore to protect can be the thing in which we show that extreme anger and aggression and rage to. And man, there's a lot of applications in which that is relevant to our lives. Um, yeah, I think there's if we dive in deeper to that line of thinking or that trail of thinking, I think that there's room there to explore some of the crazier or some of the more extreme um, effects that it can have on us in our lives, such as loved ones, right? Or you know, um, family members, spouses, friends, friendship. In the sheer act of rage, it does give us this sense of I don't want to say fulfillment, but man, there is something very like I don't want to say addictive, but there is something internally that it does give us some level of chemical affirmation or chemical stimuli where it just it scratches an itch that we have within us that it really just does not complete us, but you know feed in to this feeling that we have of empowerment, right? And that really ultimately feeds into ego and then feeds into pride and then becomes kind of an alter ego, which is very shows immediate signs of oh man, I can't believe that I just thought of that word again and I can't I can't think of it. Forgive me for my illiteracy here. um but it shows signs of an unwillingness to be responsible for our own actions, right? It leads into a lot of it leads into a lot. So in the physical sense, this has more likely of an opportunity to escalate into a very serious problem, right? Which becomes usually violent. Um, which then, if it becomes violent, it's only a matter of the intenseness of that rage or extreme anger that justifies the level and actions that we take to justify our feelings. And that's really how it's unfortunately because when you're outside looking in, it doesn't look like that big of a problem. But when you're in the heat of the moment, it really does. It is just a matter of this simple problem that can be easily explained and easily talked out in a more civic manner, but yet this pride, this rage, this extreme anger can overwhelm us, can overtake us in a manner in which um, escalates to a very detrimental violent pattern. And narcissistic attributes or characteristics like to feed in on this, right? It feeds this narcissistic type of mentality and characteristic that we have, that just sits in the background, right, for our alter ego or our pride to really fuel, and that's in no way a good thing. It's just not a good thing. So, in the physical sense, rage can really be detrimental to us because it can lead to violence, physical violence, right? And just like we talked about in the last video and the previous videos, what starts internally can manifest externally. And it's so important that you talk to your significant other, talk to the person that you're feeling aggression towards. You don't always have to talk to them in that moment, but you do have to talk to them in a way in which gets the point across that both come to a simple understanding of setting a boundary in a respectful and peaceful way that can allow either bygones to be bygones, or both grow and mature in that situation where you both have a firm understanding of lines you do not cross for one another. And this could be very beneficial for friends, relationships, spouses, stuff like that, co-workers, all this stuff. It can affect all of us in every application. Now, the problem then becomes the willingness to set aside alter egos, set aside pride, set aside these these silly concepts or characteristics in ourselves that really have no place for in society, because it's these things in which makes us the worst human beings possible. It's quite literally the thing in which gives us or shows us the worst version of ourselves. So the spiritual side to this, I really think that there is a more of a very more intense demonic aggression to this that plays into a more spiritual application. I can't speak to it because I don't understand it quite well, but I really do think that there is a level of extreme anger and rage that plays into a demonic oppression, or that plays into a very just unworldly, just because I've seen people get so extremely angry and engulfed in rage that they become so unhuman, and that they just go and go and go and go, and it's just so weird. It's almost just demonic in a spiritual sense. Now, I do kind of subscribe to the idea that there our spirit could have attributes of and characteristics of positive but also negative spiritual applications, such as demonic oppression and godly attributes and characteristics. So basically, all that just to say, I think that we are capable of godly habits, godly characteristics, and very demonic and satanistic, or just demonic characteristics. I think that we are very capable of those things. As we as individuals who are creatures of natural and supernatural beings. So the supernatural side of this thing we can really start to see due to the origins of this escalation of stirring up within us, this brewing of this problem that really just escalates into a bigger domino effect and snowball effect that creates this monster. And I think it's that this rage and anger that, again, when you allow it to internally affect you, externally, it can have very um, uh, just it can have extreme effects on us that are quite frankly the opposite and very demonic of godly characteristics. I think that's really just the only way that it really ends up going down. There's not really a positive path in which anger and rage become a very good virtue. You can use that anger and rage and redirect it and fuel it for a drive or a passion. But man, you got to be careful with it because it's on a very slippery slope in which that fuel for that fire could just combust and be explosive to anybody or everybody around you, right? And I think that right there is what most people really start to notice wrath, and why it's so bad, right? Why is wrath bad? Because it makes you into a very you know unlikable person that nobody wants to be around. And then it becomes very impatient, right? I think impatient really plays a huge role in this, because when you become very impatient, you're quick to anger, you're quick to rage. And then patience, what it does is it brings a barrier in between you and the very thing that you are, angry about. And it allows you to meditate and breathe and, try to not allow yourself to get so worked up in something that is not so important. So, in both a physical sense and spiritual sense, um, I think rage can be just this escalation of a very bad concoction of negative emotion that can really escalate to more physical. I think that's really all that needs to be said there. So I hate to cut this one so short, but um, rage is kind of you know understandable within itself, right? Rage is kind of easy. It's an easy kind of characteristic to really pinpoint the physical application and the spiritual application as to why it would be so harmful for us. And really what propels it, right? What all sides of what makes it so bad. So I think that's a pretty good place to really stop with it, and in hopes of not being so redundant as it were. Thank you very much. So anyways, let's cut it there. I think that's a good one. Of course, the antidote to it is peace. The antidote to it is not that we're doing antidotes or anything like that in this segment, but I think that that rage, that, you kind of see both sides to that, and how it can be so easy to be so deadly, as it were, as one of the seven deadly sins. And I let me just put it this way too, because this is probably one of my favorite quotes from Jesus himself after Peter, cuts off one of the guards' ears, who is trying to take Jesus. I think this is really cool because this is kind of like the on the same. This is mirroring, the same. I believe it's James. No, it could be Matthew. I think it is Matthew, chapter 7, verse 1 or something like that, where it talks about, um, thou shalt not judge, for you will be judged as well. Jesus says, he who kills by the sword dies by the sword. It's blood for blood, is what he's saying, right? Like, you killed my friend, you killed my brother, I'm going to kill you. Like, it's he who kills by the sword because he is justified or he feels justified in this manner will die by the sword, because someone else will also come along and say, I want justification because you saw justification in your actions. And very similar as to what I said earlier as to why I'm kind of quick to rage when I see aggression and when I see anger being, uh, physically represented or just manifested, is he who judges will be judged as well accordingly. He who kills by the sword will die by the sword, right? It's this instinct to meet somebody at their same level. And let me also tell you this, that's also our greatest downfall, is when we bring ourselves down to their level. When we bring ourselves down to the point in which we demoralize ourselves as much as the individual that we are in conflict with demoralizes themselves and us, right? And essentially no one wins. And this is true in every sense of the word, because in a physical altercation there is truly no winner there. There is a sign, or there is a physical sense of domination, but that doesn't mean you are, just because you are triumphant doesn't mean that you were in the right. Just because you are victorious doesn't mean that the application for it was necessary or was justified. You may have internally justified it, but that doesn't mean that it's correct, that it's just. So let that also resonate within this conversation of aggression and greed, or aggression and rage. And there is a sense of greed to it too, but it mainly stems from pridefulness. So that's pretty much it. I think we've covered all kind of aspects of it. And again, this does, wrath plays into pride, right? Pride can be very, pride can be the very thing that, I hate saying but it really is just a fill in the gap of silence for me. Pride can be the trigger to what sets us off into rage. It can be the very thing in which gets us motivated to be so quick to extreme anger and rage. It can be the very thing that sets it all off, that can ignite the powder keg that is intense and extreme anger and rage. Because pride is this sense of not listening, not willing to be patient, but this sense of engaging in conflict because you're trying to save face. You're trying to look as though you are superior in every way. Your pride becomes this sense of entitlement that you have to then protect. And often when we protect something, we use aggression, we use rage, we use violence to get the point across. So unfortunately, that's how it escalates. It's not a good thing. It's not a good thing at all. But it is nonetheless, unfortunately, how it manifests. But the best thing we can ever do is you'll find out in the next segment of morality. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you guys take care. Hope you guys have a fantastic day. And I'll try to stop saying So thank you guys so much. Take care. Hope you have a fantastic day. I'll see you in the next one.